What is to be?
With loneliness, it's a feeling of being empty and being isolated and devoid of connection when you are existing as an individual or amongst other people. It is the deficiency of belonging, where you start to have low mood and you feel like you are not worthy of other people's value and interaction. It happens on a continuum. People can be lonely in passing phase when they change from one area to another, but there's chronic loneliness where you have been lonely for a long period of time and it's starting to affect your everyday functioning and your mental health. I think in a nutshell, that's what I can say about loneliness.
Bianca, have you ever been lonely?
Yeah, definitely.
Tanya?
Yes, definitely. I can agree.
Yeah. Have you ever been lonely?
Yeah, I think people probably have. Yeah, lonely? I have been. Yeah.
So basically, it's normal to be lonely. Like anyone can be lonely.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. I would agree that it's normal to a certain extent. It's normal to be lonely when it's in transition for a very short period of time, when it's not affecting your everyday functioning, your performance in everyday activities, and when it's not underlined by some mental and physical health conditions. It's okay to be lonely. After all, we might even term it alone time. You can have some alone time when you are alone, recuperating and finding yourself again. You can be alone in that period. When it starts to be loneliness, it means you are seeking the presence and appreciation of other people, but you are not getting it. Then that becomes now a deficiency or a problematic. The other beauty of it is we have not seen a medical definition of loneliness, but conditions which arise out of being lonely. So when you are in that continuum and it starts to tip off, that your loneliness is now pointing to anxiety, to depression, to chronic stress, to other physical health conditions, then that becomes problematic, and it's not okay to be lonely in that order.
Okay, so basically you touched on my third question, which I was going to ask. Relationship between loneliness and mental health. How can you please at least go where you talked of how loneliness is linked to depression and anxiety? How then does that happen? How is it too chronic to be lonely? Can you explain on that? How can it be too bad to be lonely?
Yeah. Thanks, Anupa, for that question. So being lonely, like I said earlier, the notion of being isolated and missing in connection with other people and missing in belonging to other people and having your social interaction needs unmet by other people who are around you, that's loneliness. When that happens for a continued period of time, like let's say more than a month, more than 2 weeks, for a period of a year, that is now being problematic. Especially when you have tried to find connection, but you are not meeting it. So you can understand that you can be lonely, then you try to do something about it, but you are not winning. People can be lonely. They try to find friends, but they are having difficulties having friends. That starts to point to some disorders that are generating. And even on your part, it starts to stress you. You become anxious as you approach other people in trying to seek for connection. And you can move into depression because you are starting to spend a lot of time alone. You are worried about it. Your mood is now getting low, and you tip off into mental disorders. Some of the people might even have, headaches when they spend a lot of time feeling lonely, trying to recuperate on their own, but they are not winning it. They start to have chronic migraine headaches and things like that. So that's one of the areas where loneliness feeds into these conditions. On the other end, it starts with the other conditions, which are stopping you from exercising your social interaction needs. When you are depressed, you are likely to spend the whole day at home alone. You don't want to interact with other people. So at the end of the day, your condition is depriving you of the social interaction needs. So you end up being lonely. There are other people with even physical ailments. When you don't have the energy to go out and play, the energy to go out and hang out with other people, then you are likely to spend more time alone and you are going to be lonely in that sense. Then there are other people who find it difficult to connect with other people. You might be in the same room and you find your friends, you know, they just need to say hi to another person and then they are connected. They are already socializing and boom, they go. But there are other people who take a lot of effort to warm up to accept other people. So they can be at a party but lonely. They can be at the same school with other people but lonely. In the same group with other people but lonely. So those are the dimensions of it. When they approach open spaces at social interaction events, they start to become anxious about it because they know even in those social interaction spaces, I'm bound to be lonely. So they are afraid to go there and they start to be anxious about it and they tip off into this condition.
Okay, I have a question for everyone. I have a question for everyone. I realized something when it comes to loneliness, especially when it comes to us as teenagers, I mean, as young adults. Is there a relationship between a person who feels lonely and maybe them being isolated by people? You know how they tend to be these social groups and social circles in schools, in universities, maybe in the workplace. There's these, I noticed that these type of people who tend to be isolated, pushed away, or they are being called names, and you think, sir, you know where I'm coming from. Tanya,
no, I understand.
You can relate.
Yeah.
When someone is feeling lonely in that regard, where it's not like it's self-proclaimed loneliness or it's something they've invited, but then they are being made to feel that way. Can that have the same repercussions as to loneliness, the loneliness you've just spoken of?
Yeah, that's what.
Can anyone just answer?
In that, the one you're describing where people purposefully isolate someone, that's now a form of bullying, and that's other people putting that person in that situation. So in that situation, either you remove yourself. So if that's happening at school, you go to other places where you know that the crowd is more accepting, and that might not be the same, but that can crush someone's spirit and make someone then isolate themselves in other areas because the people they've met have not been kind to them. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you, Laura.
Exactly. Like what Laura has said, that is even more detrimental. It's even more damaging to the inner person. To feel unwanted when it's external and is something that you cannot do something about. It tips off into mental disorders even quicker than self-isolating yourself from other groups. So being isolated because of a different identity, different belief system, and maybe presentation and likes and dislikes, it's even more detrimental because a person will tip into low self-esteem, self-doubt, lack of confidence. A lot is affected when other groups, bully you and isolate you for reasons that are beyond your control.
All right, so hypothetically, let's say I'm that person. What advice would you give to me? That I'm having the situation where even at school, I get isolated. I try to hang with these people, but I'm the child who's being pushed in corner. I don't know. What do I then do?
Yeah, so there's a lot that you can do. First is to ask for help. We normally try to make ends meet on our own, and most of the time that delays professional help seeking. Open up to other people, tell them what you are feeling, the problems that you are going through. It might be teachers, it might be any authorities around you. Open up, that's the first point of seeking help. Then when you have other people who know about professional help around you, talk to your therapist. They will understand your personality type, how best you cope, because it's by individual character that we devise a solution for each problem. So we need to understand the circumstances in which you are having this problem and who you are as a person, what capabilities, what abilities, what strengths, what weaknesses you have, so that we craft a solution because of what you already have. The other quick solution is go where you are go where you can have meaningful connection. Move into that group and start to have a sense of belonging. What I've also seen other people do well is make sure that you find a niche where you can do exceedingly well that the other group members will need you. So have an activity which exposes your strengths that other people cannot do without you. And they will connect back to you when they start to realize that. And also have an activity configuration that takes away the need to depend on other people to find connection. Do things that are interesting to you, even things that you can do on your own, so that you add meaning and value into your life, rather than to depend on other people to brighten your days. Then the other part of it is also, you might also want to have the underlying conditions treated. What is making other people not like you? Those problems can still be addressed, and then you start to be appreciated by other people.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I always wondered how these people cope. Has anyone been in that situation before? Has anyone ever felt lonely because they were being isolated?
Yeah, probably. I think a lot of people probably have. Even when you're younger, as a kid, I think you can find that that's how you kind of find your friendship groups, isn't it? Because sometimes you'll make friends with certain people, then you realize, okay, maybe I'm not the same as you, so you kind of feel a bit left out. But I guess that's how sometimes people make friends at school, isn't it? Because you'll not go from group to group, but to find your friends, that's how you find them, isn't it? So I think, especially when you're at a young age, especially for people that are trying to find themselves as well, like to kind of know who you are. I was going to say as well, actually, I think sometimes with the loneliness, sometimes it can be within yourself, sometimes in friendship groups, because you yourself tell yourself you're so different from people that you then begin to kind of isolate yourself from the group. So yeah, I think in that sense, yeah.
Bianca?
Yeah, I've definitely felt like that in the past. At school, being a minority, it kind of it affects you in some way, especially if you're new and you haven't made any friends yet. So when I was in first year, there were definitely times where I didn't have my family here. I didn't have friends. So I kind of felt alone and lonely, but it got better when I started knowing more people and making friends.
Is this? I want to understand something. Is this loneliness typical to a certain age group, or it's universal? Like the effects of loneliness, how it becomes detrimental. Can you talk of the same type of loneliness between 13 and 24, or as being the exact same type of loneliness between 25 and 40, or 40 going up? Are they the same, or they are different? Can you compare the two, the three?
I think they can be different. I think they can be different in the sense that sometimes with elderly people, their loneliness can be because they've maybe lost a partner, so they're kind of isolated from their families. A lot of them, sometimes people put them into care, especially in the UK. A lot of people get put into care, so they're kind of lonely in the sense that they're not surrounded by family, or they've lost a loved one. Whereas sometimes I feel like the loneliness in a young person personally can be kind of just because, like I said, you just kind of see yourself so differently from people. Again, it's you're trying to establish that identity who you are, so you kind of, for me personally, I think you make yourself kind of like feel a bit isolated because you're trying to find yourself. So that's how your loneliness comes about. That's how I think I would compare it sometimes. But of course, I'm sure there's many people that can experience loneliness because they haven't got family and they're a young person. But yeah.
And loneliness,
Laura, what
the
do you
more
think?
when you're older, you might need people for different things and be aware of people missing from your life in certain areas of your life. So if you at school, you need people that you work with. At work, you have your colleagues, and if you're not able to interact with them, you are able to feel their absence and how it makes your life harder. But even when you're a kid, so it's different in the sense that the situation is bigger. But even for kids, like when you're like 6, 7, like grade 1, grade 2, you feel left out. It sounds childish and whatnot, but the feeling is probably still the same. But the effects are, when you're younger, you bounce back. If this person doesn't like me, I have this friend, and kids change friends all the time and fill the gap with their parents, with their family. But as you're older, it's not as easy to replace or like to find other people because you're not in constant interaction with people all the time. So as you get older, the loneliness becomes more apparent because you realize the importance of having people around you.
Yeah, I definitely agree
Okay.
with what Laura said. As you're older, I feel like it's a little bit harder to make friends with meaningful connections. So if something happens and you end up being by yourself, it can be really hard to bounce back. But as kids, I mean, it was easier to make friends. Like if somebody was in your classroom, same classroom with you, you could easily be friends, except for obviously the cases of bullying discussed earlier. In cases like that, then it becomes really hard to be part of a friend group or to make friends.
All right. Yeah. I. So could you just round on this topic of loneliness? Just tell us what you think should actually be done about it. Like you have pointed out how it can become deadly on the topic of loneliness for us.
Yeah, so I would like to add to all the speakers and agree with them that it differs on the life continuum. And it also differs from individual to individual. We risk the trap of thinking all old people are the same. They are not. All teenagers are the same. They are not. So from case to case, the feeling and the impact of loneliness differs. It differs because of circumstances around which the loneliness is emanated from, and also because of the abilities within the individual to adjust whatever is causing that. Then my rounding up sentiments about loneliness and supporting people who are lonely, it starts with you, the person, arranging your life. So lifestyle redesign, that points to you being an active participant in your own life. Don't let other people pull the shots or determine the quality of your life. You are likely to be an object to depend on other people. Take the lead, be on the drive, be more initiative about things that happen to your life. That way it will also change the circumstances under which the loneliness affects you. And make sure that you have this routine, mental health and physical health checks, so that conditions that predispose you to loneliness or where loneliness is building to these conditions is identified early and you can get early intervention. Be a volunteer in life. I like the sentiment that you guys are volunteering in Creatism. Being a volunteer adds meaning to life. When you can partake and part with your time and expertise for social value reasons, you get a lot of meaning in your life. So be a volunteer where you can. And also have a lot of outdoor participation in life. When we spend a lot of time indoors, we think we are okay, but we are not. Humans are social beings. They are true to themselves when they interact with other people and they exist together with other people. Technology is trying to take that away from people. But that's why we are getting a lot of other problems like what we are seeing, the loneliness pandemic. So be an outdoor person. Interact a lot with other people outside. It's considered Western in other circles to have pets around you. But because by nature we were created to look after other creatures, make sure that you are doing that. It might be tending your garden, having a pet around you, having other people who depend on you. That adds a lot of meaning to life and takes away the loneliness pandemic around you. So do a lot of that. And also make sure that you try out new stuff. Don't be an old adage type of guy who sits and they're stuck with one hobby. Go and try new hobbies, because by that, when you try out new stuff, you meet out new personalities and you start renewing and refreshing on the go. Be on the drive to do a lot of that. And the last part of it, educate yourself about what is happening. Educate yourself about these things. Loneliness, how does it evolve? How way does it happen to lead into other conditions and things like that? So be on the lookout for knowledge, because knowledge liberates and knowledge is power.
Instagram. It's just about 4 questions, and I also have a question. So you mentioned some really good practical things we can do to avoid loneliness. And what specifically can we do during this pandemic? I know some of my friends who live by themselves and other people who live alone. And because of the pandemic, and here in Canada, because of the cold as well, now it's winter. So it's really hard to go outside just to have fun because it's really cold. So what advice do you have for people who are living under tight restrictions because of the pandemic and probably live by themselves as well?
Yeah. So to answer that one, I can say stay in touch with the loved ones. Stay in touch with loved ones by all means. Thanks to technology, you can use apps, Facebook, WhatsApp, and things like that. You have face interactive time with loved ones. You can be alone, but not lonely. Okay? Get connected. And the other part of it, make sure that even in that space, you introduce a lot of diversity in the things that you do. Get out of the routine and get out of the mundane type of days. Spice up your days so that there's a lot of new stuff to look up to. And that way it takes away the boredom and the feelings of, oh, I'm alone and I'm enclosed in this space. Get connected and stay in touch. And make sure that you stay in touch with loved ones. Minimize casual online relationships, because those are empty in terms of meaning. Thank you.
That's a good one. Tanya, do you have any questions?
Yeah, so there was some more questions from the Instagram. The first question is, what do you do when you know your mental blocks are getting in the way, but you also can't change?
Okay, so the solution to that is change is also initiated and supported by knowledgeable professionals. Seek professional help when you start to feel that it's overwhelming and I'm not finding a way. because you might be trying to change something that is not within your reach to change it. So get professional advice on how to go about that. Lifestyle redesign and change motivation is a whole lot of specialty in occupational therapy in psychology. So get the therapist to help you along the journey of finding change. You might not even be aware that you have the capacity to change, but you don't know how to utilize it. So your therapist will guide you on how to use that in order to facilitate change.
Thank you. I'm going to continue with the questions. There's also another question, and it says, how do I stop smoking? Started because of anxiety. So,
okay, is the anxiety gone? Is another question that I would ask that person. So get the anxiety treated. Rehabilitation, substance rehab program is a whole lot of things that we might need a whole day to discuss about. But go into spaces where the cravings are most minimum. Don't hang around people who are, reminders of you taking into cigarettes. Go into spaces where you can minimize idle time. Make use of your time away from the cigarettes and make sure that you engage in healthy living. Because when you are exercising, you are likely to be conscious of anything that is health damaging. So to join smoking, and you can't be jogging at the same time you are trying to light a cigarette. So make sure that you do that. That takes you away from health damaging behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that those sort of habits that are picked up are because a person may be lonely? Because another person asked about, do distractions help? Do you think that people maybe use these other forms of distractions like smoking, eating and stuff like that to kind of take away the fact that they maybe feel lonely?
Exactly. It's very possible. Maladaptive coping and adjustment styles are prevalent, especially when people don't know where to get help. Yeah. So unless the people go back to the primary problem, then they are likely to adjust and maladaptively for that sake.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it also seems like most of the distractions actually make things worse. I mean, if it would be better if we could pick up distractions like jogging, like you were saying, but it always ends up being something that makes the situation worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There's just one more question, and this last question says, how do we improve awareness about mental health in countries like Zimbabwe?
So I'm here in Zimbabwe, and what we are doing is one of the strategy. Let's have more voices that stand up and say the truth to challenge the myths, stigma, and discrimination. Let's have advocates, people who have gone through mental health challenges and they are making it in life. Let them speak up against all the myths around mental health. Let us be voices for those who don't have a voice. And let us educate the masses. Let us publish and write in public media. Let us normalize the subject of discussion about mental health and mental disorders. That's the starting point of it all. We already have legislation and policies that supports mental health. They need to be resourced and be implemented. It starts with you and me.